So, thank you, Laila, for being here with us. And thank you for giving me the chance to share the stage with you, which is great. Actually, the first question I wanted to ask you, you touched on that earlier when you said hello to everybody. Because people always think, I mean, you're Muhammad Ali's daughter, so it must have been your father bringing you into the sport. You mentioned earlier that was not the case. Can you just guide us through that again and a little more elaborate than you did earlier?
Of course. So, like you mentioned, it wasn't my father. I didn't think about boxing until I actually saw women's boxing on television for the first time. Christy was on Mike Tyson's undercard. I think a lot of people saw women's boxing for the first time that night and weren't even expecting to, and I automatically wanted to do it. It took me probably about a year to start training because I immediately talked myself out of it. I had never participated in sports. I didn't know what it would take. I didn't think that my family, my father especially, would like it. And I was in school full time. I also had a business. I had a nail salon. I was doing nails at the time, a successful business. And it took me a year to start training. And I just went to a boxing gym. I went to LA Boxing Gym in Los Angeles and told everyone, oh, I'm just doing this to lose weight. I didn't tell them that I was thinking about becoming a boxer because I knew how much pressure it would be. And I had to decide if that's something I really wanted to take on. And I fell in love with it after probably about 3 months of being in the gym every night after school and work. I walked in every night at 8 p.m. And loved the sport. And that's pretty much how it started.
And what was it like to get into it and then develop and become better? And what kind of mindset did you need or did you develop at that time that really dragged you into the sport?
Well, for me, I went into it with the mindset of wanting to be a champion, knowing that I could be a champion. Once I decided that I liked it and I could do it and I had natural ability, then at that point it was like, oh yeah, I'm going all in, right? So the mindset was just, what does it take to be a champion? So it was on a quest for information from other fighters, from trainers, never from my father, because my father actually didn't want me to box. When he finally found out I was training, he actually said, don't do it, it's not for you, it's not for women. It's a man's sport, it's too hard, I don't want you to do it. So you can imagine being 18, 19, and having the greatest of all time tell you, don't do it, it's not for you, I don't want you to do it. As my dad, and I had to say to him, hey, I'm gonna do it anyway, Dad, sorry. So you're either gonna, you're gonna support me or not. And he just had to kind of go along with it. So the mindset from the beginning was that I wanted to be the absolute best in my weight class. I never went into boxing to be the best ever. Everyone wants to be the GOAT now, and I'm talking about through all sports. And that term is thrown around so loosely. And you can imagine being, the child of the original GOAT who started that saying, and everyone now is, oh, the GOAT, the GOAT. It changes all the time. It's just like it kind of waters down the meaning of what that actually means. I just wanted to just keep winning. That was my goal. And you gotta be, you gotta put your all in it in order to do that, as you all know.
You mentioned you just walked into a gym, started training. How did you find and build a team around you? How did you find the people you trusted and you could trust?
So at the time, I actually was dating, who ended up being my husband, my first husband. He was a fighter. And that was a tremendous plus for me, being able to have someone who had already done it, who had been a world champion, and to really guide me, because as you all know, it's tough. The business of boxing is tough. So having him in my corner was very helpful. I didn't really have to do anything but train. And I remember when I started at LA Boxing Gym, I just went with a trainer that, trained some of the guys that were considered to be opponents. Nice guy, and put in a lot of time with me. But when I got with my ex, he was like, okay, no, we got to step it up a level. So then I started training with a guy named Dub Huntley, who, you know Dub? Yeah, that's my man. And he was a great, person for me to start with and help me develop my foundation and really my jab and boxing. And then at a certain point, it was time to level up, and I moved here, actually, to Las Vegas, started training with Roger Mayweather. So when you're around, elite trainers, people who have high expectations of you, it just kind of just clicks in. And of course, a nutritionist, and that was always a part of my fear was running out of gas. So I always made sure that I was prepared because I always wanted to have more in my tank. In those moments where you get somebody hurt and you got to step it up. I always wanted to have it, you know, and I always did.
Now you became obviously a very dominant force in your division. You dominated the super middleweight throughout your career. And what was it like, and what set you apart from the competition? What would you say?
Oh man, I mean, I think so many things. First of all, I just had I'm really hard on myself in general. And I always feel like I can do better. No matter how well I did, I always feel like I can do better. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse sometimes, but I think that just surrounding yourself with the right team, you're talking about drinking and marijuana. I never did any of that. I never drank, I never partied. My life was just boxing, and it was always just, you know, I've got 21 knockouts, 24 wins, but it was always, let me see my tape and let me see what I did wrong, because there was always something. You know, I never got to the level that I wanted to be, and it was always just perfecting my skill, never thinking that, you know, you've reached the top. You know, it's like there was never that point for me. I just wanted to keep going. So I think that my work ethic, and also with obviously DNA, confidence and strength. You know, I think my speed and my power at 168 pounds really set me apart, you know, from the opponents. And the challenge for me was just, there just wasn't a lot at 168. There still isn't. I think that women in the lighter weight classes have so much more, you know, talent that they can face. And it's always been the same as it is in you know, with heavyweights, right? It's just like a lot of the women just needed to diet down. Really, at the end of the day, they needed a nutritionist. They needed to get that extra fat off, but they didn't have the power. I was a lean, strong 168. I couldn't really get much smaller than that. I'm 200 pounds now, right? So you can really see, but I can carry this weight. So 168 was small for me.
But when you basically cleaned out the division, how did you keep yourself focused and motivated? I mean,
yeah, it was hard. It was challenging. It's almost like a pro football team having to face a college or high school team. You got to be prepared. You got to be ready. But it's hard to really feel like you accomplish anything after you win. So it's like if you see a lot of the fights in the end, I don't even look happy a lot of times at the end of a fight, because I was just kind of you know. But what you have when you're a champion, as you know, you have to defend your titles. So yeah.
At the same time, of course, you were a champion. Then you have this huge name and your father, you know, and everybody knows about it. How did you handle that pressure? Because, you know, obviously for you. You could not lose, you know. I mean,
I could.
Yeah,
you could. I mean, nobody expects you to have to be undefeated. I think when you lose, it's like, who did you lose to? You know, sometimes you lose because the judges saw it a certain way, and you might feel in your heart that you really won, and it was a great fight, and then you have a chance to have a rematch. I wish I had that. I wish I had that opportunity. I'm not saying to lose, but just to be in there with someone that I actually felt could possibly beat me. Because that to me is like what we all want. That's when you really can say, okay, I overcame something. You know, when you get in there with someone like Christy, when I fought Christy, I was kind of like, come on, Christy. Christy wasn't even my size. So beating her was fun in the moment, but it didn't really, it's kind of like, come on, you know, it was never really to me a fair fight. So I think that it's not about being undefeated. It's not about not losing. I think that, you know, the more we have talented fighters at a high level fighting each other, that's when we're going to see, you know, the best fights. Like look at my dad. He's considered the greatest of all time, but he's not undefeated. That's not what it's about. For me, it was because I was like, these girls in my weight class, I have no business losing to. But I'm sorry, but, you know, it's like I'm just an honest, real person, you know? So, yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to your dad, and as you said, not supporting you in the beginning. How did that develop over time? When he saw that you became a champion, you stood your ground, how did your relationship develop?
Well, my father came back to me at a certain point after one of my title fights and said, you know, I'm sorry. You know, I was wrong. You can fight, women can fight. I'm proud of you. And we both just kind of cried and hugged each other because I had been saying for so long, I don't care what he thinks. And of course I cared. You know, that's not only my father, but he was like the greatest, and you want his respect. You want him to look at you and say, man, I'm proud of you, you're doing good. And then he's just, you know, look at your jab, you jab like me, you move like me. He saw a lot of similarities. So I may not be a boy, I'm a girl, but, you know, I'm his youngest daughter, by the way. So there's 9 children. I'm the youngest girl. I'm the only one in the family that became a fighter. So he didn't want any of us to fight, just like I wouldn't want my daughter or my son to fight. But if they did want to, I would support them and make sure they had, the right situation. But I definitely didn't ever encourage them to do that. So I understood, So yeah, but but he would rather me retire back then. He didn't want me to keep fighting, even though he did respect, and was proud of how I was carrying myself, not only as a fighter, but just as a woman outside of the ring, because my father is the only person who had any attention on him or fame in our family. And you're like, oh God, now what is this going to be? Is she going to embarrass me? My father's Muslim, I'm not. That was always, a tension between the two of us, because if you know my father's story and what he put on the line and what he gave up for his career, for his religion, sorry, and then to have his youngest daughter tell him at 8 years old, I don't want to be Muslim. So he knew he had his hands full with me from the beginning. I've always been the one that's kind of the oddball in the family. But, and it makes sense to everyone in the family that I became a fighter, because I've always been a fighter. Before I started boxing, I've been a fighter.
Now, you mentioned Christy and everything she's done for the sport. Back when you were fighting, there was not a huge focus on women's boxing. There were not a lot of women fighting, obviously. What kind of challenges did you face? You mentioned obviously not finding opponents, but apart from that, what kind of challenges did you face as a woman getting into the sport?
I think the challenge for me was, the biggest challenge was the opponent situation, for sure, absolutely. My last name was famous, so it brought up a lot of attention to the sport. Any opportunity I got to educate people, like, no, there's so many more women fighting, you just don't know who they are, I did. But of course, just having that last name, having, the persona that people follow, that's something that, I have no control over. But I think that the challenge was definitely, I remember Jill reminded me, actually, I fought at the Garden once, and I ended up fighting Shelly Burton. I see she got her folks back there. And I gotta tell you, I was not happy about having to fight Shelly Burton, because I didn't think that she was an opponent that was gonna give me trouble. She may have thought that, but I knew. And at the Garden, I just remember thinking, man, I'm fighting at the Garden, and I'm not even gonna have a good fight. And I remember a girl named Ajoma Abujanine, who was like tall and strong, and I was trying to get her to take the fight. She had a great record at the time, and I was like, I called her. People don't know this stuff goes on behind the scenes. I was like, Ajoma, and she wouldn't take the fight. I said, what's the problem? She's like, well, there's all these sanctioning fees. I was like, I'll pay your sanctioning fees. I just did not want to fight at the Garden and have someone that wasn't going to put on a good fight, right? Because I knew it was going to come of that. And I remember she shows up after the fight, after I stopped Shelly Burton. First of all, I wasn't even like, I went into the fight and was like, kind of like, whatever. And then at a certain point, I think Shelly hit me, and then I woke up like, wait a minute, what am I doing? And then I stopped her. But I remember Joma shows up after the fight, sitting in the audience, and complains, look at this contract they gave me. And I was like, what are you talking about? I got the same contract as you. But it was always the story, right? And I was like, I started cussing. They saw another side of me that day. But I was so irritated. I was like, this is what I'm talking about. Now you show up after the fight, and you're complaining, but you should have been in the fight. And then they didn't put the fight on. It was an HBO card. And this is what Jill reminded me. It was an HBO card, but they didn't show my fight because they didn't show women's boxing. And they said, their excuse was, well, it wasn't a competitive fight. But what can I say? So those were some of the challenges. And these women have so many more opportunities now, and it's amazing.
No, when you mentioned you take the phone and just call fighters and say, hey, fight me. Did you do a lot of that by yourself, like management stuff, matchmaking stuff? Or
No, not at all. I didn't do any of that. At this time, I had divorced my ex-husband, so I was kind of in a situation a lot of women are now, having to do a lot on my own. And I just remember someone getting her number from the matchmaker, like, please, just give me her number. And I've done that a few times. I remember trying to get Ann Wolfe on the phone in the back, let me call her, and the fights would never happen. And that's one of the reasons why I retired. I got tired of trying to train at an elite level to get in there and just feel like, it just didn't excite me anymore.
Talking about the chances that that women have today in the sport, what would you say are the most significant changes that happened during the time span after you retired the last 20 years?
Oh, it's hard to say exactly, but I know that I think that women's boxing in the Olympics has made a big difference. That wasn't an option for me. That's why I didn't even fight pro. I think having the opportunity to fight for your country and seeing the success that women are having now and seeing it being something viable you can actually make money doing if you get the right team behind you and you do well, I think that makes a difference. I think that, I mean, we all, like I said earlier, we're all going to be trailblazers, right? And at a certain point, and we, you know, whether people say your name or not, you're making a difference every time you get in there and put on a good fight. I think that it's amazing to see, because when I was fighting, it was like, oh yeah, that's because she's Muhammad Ali's daughter. But look, at these girls are building from the ground up, and they don't have a famous father, and they're able to get attention for themselves, make way more money than I ever made in boxing. I made more money outside of the ring. But you know, there's so much that can be done if you're smart, right? You have people who have an excellent record and are winning, but they might have a nasty attitude outside of the ring, and they're not likable, and they're not gonna get any endorsements and any deals and things like that. So whenever you're, you know, representing yourself, you have to think about that, because brands don't want to be associated with negativity and drama and things like that. So there's a fine line. When I was boxing, I would tell you, I'm gonna whoop your ass, I'm gonna break your nose, whatever it's gonna be. I would tell you, and I was like, some people didn't like it, that's okay. But I still was able to get certain deals, because, you know, there's certain things that are expected when you're a fighter, right? But then sometimes we gotta find, where's that fine line, right? Where you can still be a lady, you can still be a fighter, and you can still be brand friendly, right? Because nobody wants to take chances with you and invest in you if you're gonna make their brand look bad. So you just have to really think about that. You know, going forward, I forgot what the question was because I just kind of went on and on. But I want to make sure that I say that, right? Because sometimes people shoot themselves in their foot, but they don't understand, and they're victim, and they blame everybody else. But you have to look at what image you're putting out there, you know, because you are going to be an extension of your brand, and what you do outside of boxing, you know, it's all going to come, I mean, inside of boxing, you want to make sure you're thinking about that now. You know, I know we're going to talk about that, but I'm not going to go into it.
You mentioned the Olympics, and of course women being allowed to fight at the Olympics for the first time, 2012 in London. Do you regret not being able to fight as an amateur at the Olympics? I
don't regret it. I'm a very spiritual person, and everything happens for a reason, so I don't worry about things I can't control. You know, I think that everything happened the way that it's supposed to for me. But yeah, would it have been nice to have been able to box in the Olympics? Possibly, you know. I think that, you know, you think on a business level, and I'm a business person, I always have been, yeah, that would have been the exposure that you get from that, right? People know me from so many things. You know, I've hosted so many television shows. I did Dancing with the Stars, just all these different things, but they like the idea that I'm a fighter, but they haven't actually seen me fight. You know, they might go look on YouTube. But, you know, when I was boxing, people didn't see me fight. They just liked the idea that, oh, wow, you're so strong, you're so beautiful, you're so, you know, you're a warrior, and women needed that empowerment, you know. But to have the opportunity to box on a level where the world is watching, doing what I love, you know, what I want to be known for mostly, would have been amazing.
And I totally agree that the impact of the Olympics has been tremendous for women's boxing. So it's so important that we keep boxing as an Olympic sport, and it's very good that it looks like LA will go ahead. So what was the moment when you realized now it's time to say, call it a career and finally retire and hang up the gloves?
I think I kind of led up to that, just saying that I literally ran out of people to fight, literally. So when you're defending your titles, once I became a champion, I stayed one. Every fight was a title defense, right? I actually have, what do I have, 5 titles? I have a light heavyweight title that I don't even really talk about. It's always like, you know, it's just a middleweight champion, super middleweight, but I actually have a light heavyweight title also. But again, the titles to me, it really comes, who did you fight, right, is what it comes down to. So I've never really based my career off of titles. It's just the feeling that I have. And when I first started, I could look at all of the women that I might possibly fight. I'm like, man, I'm gonna fight her, and I might possibly fight her, and I was getting ready for them, and I was coming for them. They didn't realize it. They thought they were coming for me. Then I was excited, you know, but then I got to a certain level where it was kind of like, okay, now I'm kind of bored, and I didn't see much competition. There was 3 girls in my weight class that were not undefeated. It was Natasha Ragosina, she was out of Europe, Ann Wolfe, Letitia Robinson, who was a really good amateur fighter and boxer, and none of us ever fought each other. And everyone's like, oh, it's her, it's her. But it's like, why are the top people not fighting each other? And if it's me, why won't you guys fight each other? You know, I got tired of that story and just wanted to start a family, met my husband I'm married to now, and just thought, let me go back to doing the other things that I want to do. Because there's a whole world, as you all will know, outside of boxing, right? You can't do this forever.
But still, when you're in boxing, you're sort of addicted to it, you know, like the rhythm, training camp, the fights, and everything that's coming with it. Was it easy for you to transition and to say, well, I really take that step now and I'm not going back?
It's not easy. I don't think it's easy for any athlete. I don't think it's easy for football players, basketball players. When you do what you love and the thrill you get, you know, Tierra, in that moment, right? You all know that moment. That's what I miss. I miss the adrenaline of being in that ring and feeling in full control, because it's the only place that I felt full control. Like the outcome is all on me. I love that feeling once that bell rang. But you know, I knew going in that I wasn't going to be able to do it forever. I mean, obviously, I watched my father, right? My father, who ended up with Parkinson's, and people are like, well, did it come from boxing or didn't it? I knew he stayed in the ring too long when he fought Larry Holmes. So I knew going in firsthand, I'm not going to do it forever. So it was definitely hard, and then you're kind of go through a little bit of a I don't want to say depression clinically, but we're just like, dang, what am I going to do now that I love as much as boxing? And I don't love anything as much as boxing. Nothing that I do I love as much as boxing, right? But you know, I'm glad to have had the opportunity to do it, and you know, it's time to just do other things. I can hit the heavy bag. I still train. I still work out. You know, I can still go probably 3 rounds. I can still go 3 rounds. You got to keep a can with you, right? You got to be ready, okay? You never know what might happen.
Now, you mentioned that of course, you were a star in the ring, but you made more money outside of the ring with your brand. How did you really build up your brand? What was your vision for your brand getting into your career, but then for the time after your career too?
We hear that word brand so much too now. Everyone's like a brand, a brand, a brand. It kind of, that, you know, gets overused. But I think that I literally have a brand called Laila Ali Lifestyle, and it's a business. And for me, it really came down to what is it that I'm passionate about, you know, and turning that into a business. I was passionate about helping my friends and family members lose weight, you know, with their meal plans and their workout plans, and just giving them information on living a healthier lifestyle and creating, choosing cleaner products, cleaner ways of eating. So for me, and being that we have a big problem here in our country and abroad with diabetes and heart disease and obesity and all of these things that are lifestyle choices, especially in the Black community, I felt like it would be a great cause and platform for me. So I started to do, that's what came naturally to me, where I was very passionate about it. So what is your passion? Can you turn that into a business for yourself? So for me, that's when I started Laila Ali Lifestyle. And at that point, when you talk about building your brand and the strategy, instead of just hosting certain shows, I was like, let me get into the food space, because I knew I wanted to do my cookbook and I wanted to do my spice blends. And then I went and competed on Chopped on the Food Network and went in there to win, and I did, you know. And I take the same process that I applied to boxing. You know, I'm going to study the situation. I'm going to figure out, okay, you know, who's the best at it? How do I need to prepare? How do I need to, you know, compete so that I'm prepared? So I showed up prepared, you know, and I won. And that gave me credibility in the food space, you know. So I went in there with that goal, right? So I think that, and now my business is my passion, and it's the thing that, you know, out of all the things that I do, I probably make the least money at, you know, but it's mine. So I want to continue building, and that excitement is there.
So you see a lot of reigning champions in the room, also some future champions. If you should give them one big advice, what would it be?
In terms of?
Well, I mean, you know, for the careers, for the time after the careers, for what you just mentioned, you know, building their brands, what kind of advice?
I mean, there's so much I could say, but to keep it general, because I don't know everyone's situation, I think that, you know, I would say to any athlete, you know, always strive to be better. And I don't mean just train hard. I'm just gonna run more miles, I'm gonna hit the bag. Like, what are you thinking about when you're hitting the bag? You know, like, what are you thinking about when you're working on your jab? You know, what are you thinking about when you're working on your head movement and your rhythm and your distance and all these things? This really comes down to the sweet science. Because I see some fighters who are great fighters and they go in there and they just bang it out. And it's just like, man, I'm watching, I'm like, man, if she would just move her head. Like, you don't have to get hit so many times. Or if you would just change up the speed, like, are they still teaching that? Like, you don't want to just have one speed of your punches because your opponent gets used to that. Like, I used to stop people just by picking up the speed and then get the ref to stop the fight. I don't care if it's a TKO or a KO. I'm not trying to hit you my hardest. You know, so it's just, there's different ways. You gotta be smart in the ring. You gotta, you know what I mean? So, and think about your brain and your health. You wanna take as least amount of punches possible, right? You don't wanna just, I'm tough, I can take a punch. I could take a punch too. I had a chin, but I'm not trying to show you. I'm not trying to show you, you know? So the thing is like, what can you watch your tape and better yourself? Like, I don't care if you're a champion, I don't care if you're undefeated, none of that. You always have space to get better, and that's what you should be really looking at. And then just after your career, which it's going to happen, you're going to have to stop boxing, think about now what you want to do. And some of us are just kind of like, man, I don't know. I can't imagine myself doing anything else. Well, you have to. You got to figure out what's that thing that you're passionate about, maybe before you started boxing, before you started putting all your time and attention, and dedicate a little time to that. Like I did. I just went online and started searching. And then you just go down the rabbit hole and figure it out and look at other people who are doing what you want to do or what you might be interested in doing and take note from them, you know? And, maybe reach out to someone, hopefully they'll mentor you or something like that. But you just got to be on a quest for that information and just be strategic and be intentional. Like, don't just let life happen to you. You got to take control of life. You know, you got to start now.
Are you still following the sport and watching many fights, or?
So I wouldn't say I follow the sport, but I definitely watch. I've always been someone who pretty much watches fighters that I like or I'm a fan of, but sometimes I literally just am busy with, are there any mothers in here? Raise your hands. Okay, so you all know, when you have kids, that changes things. So, when the TV's on, the kids are watching. So I live in Georgia now. Sometimes the fights come on too late. Or I'm at my son's baseball tournament or my daughter's baseball tournament all day, and I'm just tired. So a lot of times I have to catch up afterwards and kind of check in and see what happened. I'm not able to be there in the moment. And I try to travel as least as possible because family comes first. And I always say that I'm a little bit of an overcompensator in that area because my dad wasn't home. My dad traveled the world and I missed out on a lot. So I overcompensate in that area for my children. I think that I'm really focused on wanting to be there for them. Like my daughter was like, you're leaving? Like my birthday's coming. I'm like, I'm gonna be home before your birthday because her birthday's on the 4th. So yeah, but they're what brings me the most joy. But yeah, I do follow. I recognize a lot of the faces in the audience here. Some I don't, I want to get to know more of. But yeah, I just am really proud of how far women's boxing has come. I'm really proud of the WBC and they've always supported me from the time that I think I was the first champion at 168. And the Sulaimán family and my family has been close for so many years. So it's really amazing to see, the level of talent. I saw it back then though. I remember there was Kim Messer and Bridget Baby Doll Riley and Laila, Alicia Ashley and just all these different names that I can think of that were talented back then. So a lot of people will say now there weren't that many women can actually fight now. No, they could fight back then too. They just didn't have the platform.
Thank you so much for taking the time and being with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All the best to all of you.